It's been a while since I have reminded my audience that you don't need to watch every single horror movie in order to be a horror fan. And also, it's okay to have boundaries. I have a lot of boundaries when it comes to horror, and a lot of people try to gatekeep the genre and say that you can't say that you won't watch certain movies, which I just think is so strange because the genre is so wide. There is a million subgenres for a reason. There's something for everyone, and everyone can be a horror fan. If you like certain types of horror movies or a horror movie, guess what? You're a horror fan. Listen, if you don't want to hear the spiel, you've heard it before. You can skip forward to this time. It's just that I recently have hit 250,000 subscribers, which thank you so much. I'm so excited. But there's a lot of new subscribers here. So I just wanted to reiterate that with this video. You don't have to watch the horror movies that are not made for you. There are target audiences for every single movie, not just horror movies. And not everyone can fit into those target audiences. And that goes for subgenres as well. So the really extreme, disturbing stuff, it's not going to be for everyone. It's not marketed for everyone. That's why we don't see the trailers for them in theaters. We don't see the movies in theaters. There's a reason for that. Now, almost 3 years ago, I made a video on movies that I refuse to watch / am too scared to watch. I will link it up here. That's the OG. It got really popular. And while that did bring on the usual anticipated gatekeepers into the picture, I'm actually really happy that I made that video because it reached a lot of you who also deal with the same thing of not liking certain types of horror, which is totally fine. We all have different things that bother us, or, you know, we all have our limits in horror. And I'm glad that we created that safe space where we can all talk about the different things that we don't like in horror for one reason or another. You just never know what people have been through. And a lot of horror feeds on real life trauma. And while that's great for some people, and some people love that and eat it all up, others don't enjoy it so much, especially if it hits too close to home. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that the movies in this video hit close to home for me. I'm not saying that. It's just things that are icky and I don't want to watch. Let's normalize knowing our own boundaries when it comes to disturbing stuff, because let's say it together, you don't need to watch everything to be a horror fan. You don't need to watch the disturbing stuff. You do not. You absolutely do not. Now, if I don't list a movie here that seems very obvious that I would not like, there's a couple reasons for that. One, I probably have already talked about it in that other video. The biggest ones you can think of are probably in that video, or I've seen it. I have seen, in my opinion, the most disturbing movie of all time. And you know what that is. But I have also made a video on the most disturbing movies I've ever seen. And you'll see that some of the movies are in there. I have watched some, you know, I know what I like and don't like because I've seen a lot. Anyway, let's get started. The first 3 movies in this video are kind of on this list for similar reasons. And they're all really famous movies and famous for certain scenes within them that maybe they were on my radar at one point when I was first getting into the genre. And I think a lot of people think that you need to see these movies to be a horror fan. I think there are those gatekeepers, but I'm here to tell you that I'm not gonna watch them. And you don't have to watch them. First up, I Spit on Your Grave, the original or the remake. I haven't seen either. I don't really care to. Rape revenge stories, not really my thing. I don't love them. There's really no need for me to watch it. I know people think it's a classic, and yes, it's iconic. It's famous for some scenes, and maybe, you know, there's justice involved. That's cool. But I don't need to see it. I don't really need to. You know, I think I've gone this long without seeing I Spit on Your Grave. I'm okay. Next, the original Last House on the Left. I actually own the remake on DVD, if you can believe it. I know. Have I rewatched it? No. I haven't, because I will skip that scene if I ever get the urge to rewatch it. I don't really have an interest in the original. I don't. I'm sorry. Again, I know people think it's a classic, especially if I have seen and liked the remake, right? You'd think I have to see the original, right? You don't. I don't, you don't. If there is a time period that you're not really into when it comes to horror movies, don't let people tell you that you need to watch all the movies from that time period. I get that comment all the time as someone who prefers 90s, 2000s, and modern movies. People tell me I need to look into the older movies. A lot of my favorite movies come from, you know, they're older movies, and that's fine. But generally, I'm not drawn to those eras. I think we like certain eras of horror because they're nostalgic for us personally, like we grew up within that era, or we have an interest in that era in general. And that's okay. So anyway, that's a side little rant. You don't need to watch every era of horror if you're not drawn to it. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. The original Hills Have Eyes. I've gone this long without seeing it. I think I'm fine. I don't really need to see it. Again, that's a movie that I like the remake. I have rewatched the remake multiple times. I enjoy The Hills Have Eyes, and including the sequel, which I know there's really disturbing stuff in both of those. Like, you would think that I would not be into it, but I think I've seen it now to where I'm a little bit more desensitized and know when the scenes take place, and I can skip them, you know, and I do skip scenes. You need to normalize that as well. If there's a movie that you like, but you don't like a specific scene, whether it's too gory or there's, you know, SA or something going on, you could skip it. Just hit the next chapter. Just skip that chapter. It's okay. You can still enjoy a movie and skip scenes. Anyway, I don't really have a reason to watch the original, to be honest. Like, I don't care. I don't care to. Okay, now we're going to get into some modern movies that I refuse to watch. A lot of the movies that I refuse to watch are actually older, not because they're older, although that's a valid reason too, but because they have a lot of SA in them. You'll see a theme. Every movie I don't want to watch has SA in it. And I'm tired of male horror fans trying to convince women that we need to watch these movies to enjoy the genre. We don't. Dogtooth. Okay, so the main story is that a father locks his 3 children, adult children, in a state of perpetual childhood by keeping them prisoner within the family compound. And what makes this disturbing is there is incest and pedophilia within this movie. So that's going to be a no thank you from me on multiple levels. Don't want to see that at all. Now, this is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. I'm sorry if I pronounce his name wrong. I always pronounce everything wrong. Who also did Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I hate, but he also made The Lobster, which I love. So he and I have a very love-hate relationship. Now, he's also directing Poor Things with Emma Stone, which is coming out soon, and I'm honestly a little nervous to watch it. The trailer looks really fascinating, but it does look like there are some things in it that might not be for me. So I could really either love that movie or hate it, because I like the bizarre choices he makes. Like, I appreciate and respect his art form, like the artistic decisions that, you know, goes into his movies. I appreciate them. I'm not necessarily the target audience for those, but I can respect that that is an artistic choice. Now, his inspiration for Dogtooth came about because some friends were getting married and he had expressed doubts of the institution or about the institution and family in general. He sounds like a great friend. Someone's coming to you excited to get married and he's like, you know what I think? And he thought about what would happen if a man went to extremes to protect his family. And I don't know exactly where the incest takes place, but that doesn't sound like protecting your family. Now, obviously I haven't seen the movie, but it does sound, based on what I've heard about the movie, I haven't really read the description that much. It sounds like the worst things that could happen to a family do happen. So he's not very successful in protecting his family. But if a movie has either of those things in it, not gonna watch it. Plain and simple. Unless it's like heavily implied and like you don't see anything. But from what I understand, you do see things. So no thank you. Next up we have Excision. Now this is actually a movie that was on my radar for a while. It's been on my list for a while of movies to watch because it intrigued me, and then I just don't want to watch it anymore. Now, this follows a disturbed and delusional high school student who has aspirations of a medical career, and she goes to extremes to earn the approval of her overbearing mother. And she really likes medical procedures and blood and surgery and things. And by really likes, I mean she is turned on by it. I don't like that. That's not for me. Anything that kind of has like deviancies in it that are to the extreme like that, I don't like. Not gonna be for me. Okay. Anyway, I just have never gotten around to watching this, and I don't think I ever will. I don't feel like it's a priority to me to watch this movie, even though at one point I was interested in it because everyone was talking about it. Now, this is the one that I'd most likely watch out of all of them. Like, if someone wanted to watch it with me, I'd be like, okay, I guess. But I just don't have a strong urge. So it's going on this list of movies I refuse to watch. I don't necessarily refuse to watch this one. I probably would because I don't think it's as bad as the others. But I just have no interest in it anymore. Like, I really don't. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about is actually not a full-length movie. It is a short, and it was getting very popular around TikTok, or at least in the horror sphere on TikTok, if you were on there, especially when Beau is Afraid was coming out, and that is The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. Now, this follows a seemingly normal suburban family. However, the father is involved in an abusive, incestuous relationship with his son. I can't do that. I can't do it. I don't see any entertainment value in that. As much as I appreciate Ari Aster, and I love Ari Aster as a creative person and as a, writer, director, whatever, I can't do it. I can't. So this was actually Ari Aster's thesis for when he was studying at the American Film Institute in California. And then it was screened, I think, at a film festival. Now, the small description that I explained to you is more than enough for me not to watch it. However, in preparation for this video, I did read out of curiosity a little bit, a lot of the Wikipedia summary. I read almost all of it. There's more. It's not just like a scene that is a little incestuous-y. It's the whole thing. There's a lot of scenes, actually. And that it's too much. It's too much. It definitely crosses my boundaries, crosses the line to me. I can't do it. And obviously Ari Aster has always loved shock value in his movies. I feel like he's kind of known for disturbing movies. However, I guess he has remained pretty reserved compared to what his thesis was. Like, this was his first time directing something. Can you imagine if that was, a consistent theme within his movies? Thank God he's a little bit more reserved in the rest of his filmography, because I couldn't watch his movies if it was more like that. Now, I don't want to judge too harshly these kind of things, these movies, because to each their own is what I always say. But a part of me does feel like things, especially like the last one, they feel like edgy, like an edgelord, is like trying to create the most disturbing thing they can. I was that person. I was that writer in high school who was trying to write the most disturbing things that I could for shock value. As a teenager who just discovered that she loved horror, and I'm like, oh, I got horror up here. And that's what it reminds me of with these shock value things. To me, it loses a lot of the artistic choices made, and I just don't know why a lot of these things are made. And every time I say something like that, I always get backlash. Well, horror is all encompassing. Why should certain things be off limits in horror? And I completely agree that not everything, is off limits, or like things shouldn't be off limits just because it bothers people. That's the point of horror. That's another thing that I get told a lot in these videos is, well, that's the point of horror, is to disturb you and to feel horrified. But not like that. I argue, not like that. That's not how I want to be horrified. That's how some people want to be horrified, obviously. These things keep getting made. People keep making disturbing revenge, essay, incest, pedophilia stuff because people like it. And I don't know why, personally. I can't wrap my head around it, but I'm not going to judge people for, liking these things. I am curious what your thought process is if you do like these things, because although I agree that not everything is made for entertainment purposes, there are definitely pieces that are made as more art and thought-provoking, and it's meant to move the viewer. It's meant to make a statement, whether it be political or whatnot. There are different reasons to filmmaking than just entertainment and like having a fun time. That's not always why we watch a movie. Anyway, I don't really need to vent that much more or rant or whatever, because you get it. You understand my perspective. Again, this is my opinion. You don't need to correct me and say any of the things that I, pointed out, that is something that I hear all the time of like, well, that's the point of horror, all that kind of stuff. You need to watch it to be a horror fan. No, you don't. I argue you don't. You don't need to say it. But I would love to hear your opinions respectfully. about these movies and just disturbing content in general. Horror icebergs, if you will, you know, the famous one. Anything in the horror iceberg, you know, below like Hereditary. Not watching. But hey, if you like, you know, snuff films, that's great for you. Great for you. So those are some more horror movies that I refuse to watch. There's probably a million other ones. If there's any that you know of within this style, you know what I'm saying? Like with the certain themes that I talked about, let me know in the comments so I can avoid them. Maybe I'll do a part 3 to this video because there's always more. And I love creating this discussion of being a horror fan, yet refusing to watch certain horror movies because it makes people angry for some reason, but I think it's completely valid and we need to normalize the fact that we don't need to see everything. We really don't. And there's no one correct way to be a horror fan. Don't forget that. As long as you like horror movies, you're a horror fan. Don't let anyone ever shame you for not seeing a movie or not enjoying a movie that's considered to be a classic or iconic or what you're supposed to watch to be a horror. Don't listen to any of those people. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will talk to you soon. Bye.